And we are live. Hello, carnivores, and welcome to session number 19. We are joined by a very special guest, Dani Conway herself. Dani is a board-certified functional nutrition practitioner, functional blood work specialist, and holds various certifications in other modalities of holistic health. She has been in practice for 16 years, helping women ditch the diet mentality, lose weight, and gain the energy and confidence they need to stop starving and start living. She specializes in a customized approach to nutrition, varying from low carb to carnivore, along with a focus on root cause of healing of hormone and gut issues to truly rebalance the body from the inside out. Dani has a passion for working with women over 40 in both her one-on-one practice as well as her group programs, where she truly focuses on a client's individual needs. Dani does not believe in dogma and does believe that one size never fits all. I completely agree with that. Dani got into this line of work because of her own health journey, having been 65 pounds overweight on a fat-free diet. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but we'll get more into that. And she has been featured in multiple morning news segments over the years on the keto diet, the carnivore diet, intermittent fasting, her undiet approach, along with multiple delicious low-carb recipes. Yum. She has appeared on our workout show, the supersetyourlife.com podcast, multiple times. Episode 63 is where she answered listener questions around long-term health, hormones, and digestion. Episode 128, she taught on the hunger scale. That was really helpful, how to get fat adapted and tips on beating sugar cravings. Mark and I are thrilled to have her here this week as we take a deeper dive into the world of hormones. Before we kick things off, our podcast review of the week is from Jane from New Jersey. Just listened to your episode on bench pressing or on not bench pressing, LOL. Loved it. Thank you very much for that, Jane. She is referring to session number 18, where we discussed why we recommend that you do not train with a flat barbell bench press and how we train otherwise on push day. Next week's topic will be our pull day special, which Mark and I actually just recorded. So that'll be out next week. Between those two and our leg day special, you're set for all muscle groups. Thanks again, Jane. You all know that we don't run ads on this show, so just do us a favor, please. Share this with a friend or leave a review, whichever is easiest for you. Tell us how our talk with Dani went so that we can continue to grow this show organically, making this your number one nutrition podcast. Spotify has us currently ranked at number 108 in the U.S. for nutrition podcasts. We will get there 1 week at a time, one review at a time. Thank you very much for the support, everybody. You guys rock, and we would not be here without you. Dani, welcome to Carnivore Coaches Corner.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here, Colt. Hey, Mark.
Hello, Dani. How are you?
Great, thanks.
For those that do not know you, what changed for you 16 years ago in terms of how you live and how you eat, and why?
Yeah, so I was 65 pounds overweight in a fat-free diet, and I was tired of yo-yo dieting, and I was tired of putting a lot of effort into my health journey and not getting the results that I worked so hard for. I also did tons of cardio, and it was just counterintuitive that, not eating fat, I didn't actually lose fat. So that kind of just set me on a path looking for something different. I stumbled on Atkins at that point in time, low carb, just started reducing some of the carbs I was eating more steak, eating more cheese. And I will tell you, if you think that now, it's sort of, shunned upon to eat higher fat, higher protein in back then, this is about 2006, 2007. It definitely was less mainstream than it is now. So again, just kind of went on a path looking for something different. And I had tons of cravings and all kinds of stuff back then. And it really just started to change. And so I just continued. And before I knew it, it was getting into keto and getting into carnivore and working through functional medicine testing and functional testing to get to the root cause of a lot of the hormone and digestive issues that I had. And fast forward a little bit longer, I figured that I wasn't the only woman struggling with no answers. And so that's when I, moved forward with getting certified in various areas and started helping other women just like myself who were struggling with the typical diet recommendations: chicken, brown rice, and broccoli, which I'm sure you're very familiar with your, body.
Can't forget the whole grains. Can't forget the whole grains either. You got to have those.
Yep, and kind of went from there. So that's a very short version of my story.
That's
Thanks for
amazing.
that.
65 pounds. That's incredible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Incredible. Yeah. No, I see an awful lot with women myself. Like I see an awful lot with women, like they think that the best way to get in shape is just starve themselves, do too much in the gym, where they don't understand like their cortisol levels are increasing so high, they're elevating insulin, their hormones are all over the place. So it's amazing that we have someone on today that can basically explain the factors of going forward, because there is women out there that do struggle with weight loss and they don't understand what it is. And you hear an awful lot of people saying that it's not down to hormones, it's down to calories in versus calories out, which we all know is complete rubbish. Hormones plays a major factor, especially women, when it comes to weight loss.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely believe in energy balance. But that being said, I believe it's a combination of energy balance and hormones at the same time, and whatever's going on for that person. So, back then I would do, 1 to 3 hours of spin classes and cardio a day and eat 1,200 calories. Yet, yes, was I in a deficit? Of course, because I was technically burning more than I was eating, but it didn't get me anywhere.
Yeah, it's just the type of food, isn't it? It's the type of food that we were all led to believe back then. Okay, 6 meals a day, have your carbohydrates, lower your fats, increase your protein. But all that was doing was just messing us up big time.
Exactly.
And it's a real dangerous cycle to get into when you look at only the energy balance and you don't look at the hormonal aspects too, because then we get, especially if you're weighing yourself and if your goal is to lose weight, then you see the number going down on the scale and you think that you're making progress, but you're not. You have no idea how much muscle mass you're losing. And if you look at some of the best natural bodybuilders, I mean, like Robert Sykes, for example, that guy never does cardio. He's probably doing it now towards the tail end of his prep, but when he was here, he had better conditioning than me. When I was a couple weeks out from guest posing, he was cut. He was hard. His muscle definition was absolutely incredible. And to not be doing any cardio, he's got his hormones absolutely mastered. He has his diet mastered. And whenever you think that you've taken your diet as far as you can and that you have it down as good as you can, there's always something that you can do to improve it. And so that's why I'm so amped to talk to both of you right now. I feel like I'm talking to the two biggest hormone experts on the planet right now. So what an honor. So Dani, you made a brilliant Instagram post a couple weeks ago around hormonal health that really helped a lot of our clients. And so I texted it to every single one of them, like we were talking about before we started recording just now. Yeah. And I was wondering if we could take a little bit deeper of a cut into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into that. I think it was the one on the 5 hormone problems that contribute to fatigue and weight resistance. Is that right?
Yeah, I have written down insulin, leptin, thyroid, adrenals, and sex hormones.
You got it. That's right. Yeah, these are all big players when it comes to everything from energy, metabolism, weight, sleep, mood, anxiety, depression, things of that nature, and so much more.
Absolutely. What role does insulin have for just somebody that knows nothing about insulin? What does that do in your body?
So insulin is going to help with regulating blood sugar levels, and insulin can also help with inflammation in a sense. Like if insulin's too high, it can be problematic. So that's where, of course, my approach is always food first. So dialing the food, the macros, enough protein and fat, eating enough overall, and really starting to regulate that blood sugar and insulin response so that your body can do what it needs to do and level out as far as that goes.
Awesome. Leptin, what role does that play?
So leptin is our satiety hormone, and when with leptin resistance, that can be high levels of. So let me start again. So leptin resistance, leptin can be actually too high or too low, and what happens when when leptin is out of balance or we have leptin resistance is that the signal from our brain telling us that we're full or satiated is broken. So I personally used to struggle with a ton of excessive hunger and excessive cravings. This was, years ago, so I didn't know anything at that point about testing leptin. I mean, I wish I had. But I do see a very common sort of theme with higher body composition, so higher body fat and higher leptin levels. And then in some cases, there's actually higher body fat and then lower leptin levels. So again, we don't want it too high, we don't want it too low, but that can play a role if someone feels like they're never satisfied, they're still having cravings, they're eating all the right foods, but not able to stop eating, or, you know, they're trying to fast and can't fast because food is like just taking over their thought process. And the other thing about leptin resistance is that it can actually precede insulin resistance. So insulin resistance is often, obviously, a very common thing that we talk about in the space. And then I think leptin resistance kind of has sort of come into play over the last couple of years as far as being discussed and looked at. Leptin is something that I always test with my clients. And then, you know, kind of going from there in terms of seeing where their leptin is, and then that's going to, you know, play a role in how we actually rebalance it.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's key to pay attention to your leptin in terms of satiety, and instead of looking at food as volume. I think that's a trap that a lot of us fall into, especially bodybuilders towards the end of a prep. It's just how much broccoli can you pack away? How much asparagus can you pack away? And what are we doing? We're getting bloated, but yet we're not producing the leptin to tell our brains that we've had enough food. And so we're always looking for more nutrients, and we're just watering it down with, I say we as if I still do this. I do not still do this, obviously, but I did. And guess what happened? That in combination with doing too much cardio wrecked my thyroid, which brings us to point number 3. So the thyroid, what role does that play in terms of fat loss, body composition, overall health?
Yeah, I mean, energy, metabolism. I think what's important to realize about thyroid is that, because I see a ton of women with various forms of low thyroid, you know, and what happens, I think, with thyroid is that there's such a commonality with history of restrictive dieting, yo-yo dieting, even, you know, eating disorders, and then thyroid imbalance. So under eating plays a huge role with like thyroid going awry, so to speak, because what happens when we undereat, we, you know, even if it's with good intention as far as weight loss goes and that kind of thing, it's going to affect metabolism, it's going to affect energy, it's going to affect energy production. All of this is impaired. It's going to start to affect your nutrients, nutrient absorption, nutrient utilization, and then it's kind of a downward spiral from there.
Yeah, and I think this is where your adrenals then produce cortisol, and this is where your cortisol comes in, and a lot of people get stressed. The stress hormone goes up then.
Yeah, no, definitely. So cortisol is an interesting one because whenever there's a thyroid imbalance, there's almost always an adrenal imbalance with cortisol. But whenever there's an adrenal imbalance, there's not always a thyroid imbalance. And so the thing with most women who are seeking, let's just say, thyroid help, whether it's functional doctor, you know, medical doctor, whatever, and more so with a medical doctor, and I'm just going to side note and say there's a time and place for medical doctors, but when you're trying to get to the root cause, that's not what they're trained to do. So with that being said, a lot of women are trying to address a thyroid imbalance without addressing the adrenals at the same time. And that can be, you know, problematic, of course. And then the other piece of the cortisol puzzle is that you can have cortisol that's too high, and that's a problem. And you can also have cortisol that's too low. And that's a problem as well. So we automatically think, oh, we can't lose weight, more belly fat, that must mean our cortisol is elevated. And that's definitely possible. But the problem is that if you don't actually test, so I'm a big believer in test, don't guess as far as what the hormone levels are. If you don't actually test to see what the hormones are doing, it's really hard to rebalance them and know the right protocols to use in order to, you know, to get them back into balance. So that was kind of my long answer, but yes, Mark, the cortisol and the adrenals have play a big role with the thyroid.
You're talking about testing for hormones a lot. What does that look like? I don't test the like leptin levels or anything. Like we talk about our satiety signals in our one-on-one coaching and our consultations, but is that something you have them do on their own? What does that look like?
Yeah, so when I do a lot of functional testing with clients, so I utilize blood work, I utilize urine testing. Those are kind of my top two. body fluids, so to speak, that I like to use for hormone testing. So with blood work, I'm looking at, full expanded thyroid panel, complete metabolic panel, a lot of inflammatory markers, iron, and then leptin, adiponectin. So all of those key hormones, they play a role with each other. So when I do that analysis, I'm looking at, how the person is functioning overall and looking at for the imbalances together and what we're going to do about everything as a whole. So I always say, you're a whole person. You're not just your arm or your leg or your hair, everything is connected. And so that's how I look at, blood work and testing. And then with adrenals specifically, that's where I do urine testing. So it used to be saliva years ago, and saliva testing is still available. It's a good test, but I find urine to be a little bit better because we're testing different types of cortisol. Also, hormone metabolism when it comes to sex hormones, how the body's processing and producing and metabolizing hormones. So that can play a role as well. But just to answer your question, looking at the different levels and kind of evaluating and analyzing them together to see what's going on for that individual person and what imbalances might be contributing to, to their lack of ability to get their results. So food first always, and there's a lot of people out there, as you well know, that, you change their diet and you get them on the right exercise program and bam, they are like getting the best results. They felt the best that they ever had. But there is a percentage of people out there that do all that and they still can't quite get there. And that's kind of where the testing comes in is, test, don't guess, really see what's going on under the surface rather than just guessing at, what doing more cardio or, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and I think it's a time as well because you could always guess, but it's just going to take a long time to get to the answers that you need. Whereas if you just go straight for a blood test and find out what those markers are, see what the problems are, try and get, like you said, just get to the root problem. Try and get to the root problem as quick as possible. Then you can get the result that you want a lot faster.
Yeah, no, and I definitely believe in, I think that I want to say I'm not one for quick fixes either. So just to clarify, and I know you guys aren't, but I just want to make this point really clear is that, it definitely takes time. So even, on a program for 2, 3, 6 months, and then at that point, kind of looking at, if you've had marked results or you're like, I think I should be, further along than I am, then I think that's always a good point in time to look at that stuff. And in all honesty, I think it's also good to get a baseline, right? So when you start and see what things are doing, and then you can, decide to retest 6, 8 months down the road, and then you kind of have, that progress to track as well. So just different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, totally. What are some of the symptoms that you see when someone has low thyroid? It affects more than just their body composition. It affects their mood. It affects their brain. More specifically, what do you notice when someone has low thyroid?
Yeah, so energy levels and sleep are huge. And we all know, like, sleep in and of itself, poor sleep can contribute to lack of weight loss or lack of being able to change body composition. Those are the big ones. And then energy, low energy. I think you just said that, Colt. Low mood, depression, anxiety. Those are probably the top ones. And then sometimes with thyroid, like digestive issues can be the real root cause of thyroid imbalance. So then you can get into nutrient deficiencies and things of that nature.
Do you see things like leptins and phytic acid as being problematic and gut health that could be a contributing cause to thyroid issues as well?
Yeah. Well, okay. Yes, definitely contributing factors. They are still usually not the root cause. So when I talk about root cause with gut issues, it's more like pathogens, bacterial imbalances, mold, mycotoxins, things that they've been exposed to that are, lurking under the surface, but they steal nutrients and they can steal iron and they can, cause all these problems. And then that's going to kind of reflect with the hormones as well. So, one of the things I like to say is like, the root cause of a hormone problem typically is not a hormone problem. And that's why you got to test, don't guess, and look further if you're not getting the results that that you're intending for.
Yeah. Right. And a lot of those problems that are coming from foods they were eating, it can be deceptive too. Correct me if I'm wrong, because on the nutrition label, you'll see, oh, it has this much of that vitamin. It has this much of that vitamin. It has this much of that vitamin. Great. But you don't know how much it could be leaching nutrients from
Sugar,
Right.
from the rest of your body.
Yeah. What's bioavailable? The other thing I was thinking as you were talking is, like a non-meat protein source, right? Oh, it has 20 grams of protein. Well, how much do you actually absorb?
Right.
So
Yeah, and we're assuming that the nutrition labels are even remotely accurate too, which we know in most cases they're not.
yeah, there's that whole thing as well.
Cool. Okay, so that's all four of them except for the last one, which is sex hormones. And actually, I have a great question that came in from Wendy from Minnesota. Are there any natural? Well, yeah, I guess I could ask the question after. So, just like generally speaking, what main sex hormones contribute to an inability to lose weight? Calorie expenditure, energy expenditure aside.
Yeah, so I think, the main sex hormones we're talking about, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And so I think that it's important to realize that men and women have all three. We just have them in different amounts. So obviously men are supposed to have more testosterone, less estrogen, less progesterone, but men still have all three. And women have, of course, estrogen and progesterone. They also have testosterone. We just have different balances and different ratios. Whether we're cycling, perimenopausal, postmenopausal, it's all going to play a role in how much of each hormone we actually have. And so with the various imbalances and when ratios are off, there's estrogen dominance, which men and women can both have. And that can, be problematic. Of course, low testosterone in women can make changing body composition very difficult. In women with low testosterone, that can affect libido, that can affect motivation, energy, well-being, and then, of course, muscle building, muscle mass, body composition. And then, yes, it's going to affect the same things in men as well. Of course, like I said, men have higher levels of testosterone. Then with estrogen and progesterone, that's a fine balance also. So one of the biggest, I would say, I don't want to call it a myth, I guess misinformation, because I have a lot of, my practice is basically made up of 90% women between the ages of 40 and 70, I would say. And of course, that's the time where women become this, perimenopausal, going into menopause. Perimenopausal meaning the time when things just start to change, and you might have a cycle every month for 3 months, and then you might not have a cycle for 9 months and think you're almost there, because that year mark is when a woman, technically officially goes into menopause, and then that cycle might show up again, and then all of a sudden the clock starts over. So at that point in time, or in this kind of process, a lot of what I see out there is if people are going to be using bioidenticals or some type of hormone replacement, is that, women don't need any progesterone because they're not going to have, they're not going to have a child anymore. Like, their goal isn't to have kids. And the thing is that estrogen and progesterone should be in certain ratios. So just because a woman is over 45 doesn't mean that they don't need progesterone with whatever they're doing to help them sleep at night, to help reduce anxiety and, mood and, or poor mood, depression, things like that. So I think I'm going off on a tangent. I don't even remember what question you asked me, but I just get so frustrated because I see a lot of, imbalances and low hormones, but not really the correct approach as far as like what women and men need in the, years after 40. Food first always. So these hormones are what are called steroid hormones, meaning that cholesterol and saturated fat is what we need to make them. And so food right first, proteins, fats, keto, carnivore is like the best way to get the nutrients that we need, of course, and then going from there as far as balancing. So I'm going to stop for a second because I kind of got on a tangent with that one, but did I even answer your question?
Oh yeah. No, and then some, very, very thoroughly. And I love how you described how they're all interconnected too. And you're because your body's always looking for an equilibrium. And when one hormone changes, it changes everything else too. You mentioned cycle multiple times, and I got excited because I thought you were going to start talking about steroid cycles. I'm just kidding. This is also a bodybuilding podcast too. But you see it all the time with enhanced users. So like they'll inject either testosterone or something similar to testosterone, looking for the anabolic benefits of it. Great. And then what happens? Your estrogen comes up along with it. And then you have these male athletes that are big and they have a lot of muscle, but on stage they're watery, and something doesn't look quite right. It's hard to really pinpoint. You compare that to a natural athlete that will not have as much muscle mass, but they get shredded to the bone, and they have a muscle definition that is hard to get when I don't see guys that are on gear getting this kind of conditioning like you see Robert Sykes having. Coach Mark's going to be stepping on stage up against all kinds of guys that are on gear, so he's gonna see exactly what I'm talking about when you come over here.
I also say when you see that these big guys, you can see that they're sweating, you can see they're unhealthy, they're not right, they're not happy, they're not smiling. You can see that there's depression there. Probably they have problems with their relationships. You can see there's so many factors there that are going to cause problems, and it's like, okay, is it really worth it? Is it really worth taking these injections? You know what I mean? When you look at a natural person, he's happy. He's got happy hormones. He feels amazing. He feels fantastic. And he's equally just as shredded without going down that dark route.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to just add in, because I did mention bioidentical hormones, and I want to kind of just because a lot of people ask me if I believe in using bioidentical hormone therapy. So what I want to say is I kind of fall in the middle between not using hormone therapy and having that be the only thing that someone uses as their go-to. And so the reason for that is because there's a lot of things that we have to look at before just jumping to hormone therapy. Because what happens is, if you think about hormones like in a pyramid or like a chain, and the sex hormones are on the bottom, and someone just starts taking estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone, when they don't address anything else, the food, the gut, the digestion, how things are working, the absorption, and they just go to the hormones are going to fix all my problems. That's not the case. They'll usually end up crashing. Like, they might feel good for a short period of time. I see this all the time, from a week to a couple of months, maybe longer, but they do end up crashing. And so the, best way to approach it, again, food first, get the food right, get the nutrients right, make sure you're absorbing what you're eating. Fix the digestion if that is a problem. And then there are tons of, and I know we're, keto and carnivore, which is animal based. There are definitely still herbs that can be used, herbal extracts and things where you're not getting the toxic forms of plants, but things that can support hormones if someone wants to try that before just going the bioidentical route. And then after they've gone through all those types of protocols and rebalancing, at that point, if someone wants to say, hey, I think bioidenticals would be something that would, could help them, then absolutely go for it. That's where I'm for it. I'm just not for it too soon in the process, because when they don't kind of work on all the other things that are going on, that's when it ends up crashing, and it ends up backfiring.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I know you've mentioned a few times like food first, and I completely agree, because I think when we look at food, the brain and the tummy connection is real. So if one is not working and the other one is not working, then if one is not working, then the other one is not working. Your brain is not going to feel good, so you're not going to train. And we see an awful lot of women, they go in, they say, right, okay, I don't feel good, I just go to the gym, I just train every single day, I'll overtrain, and it makes the situation even worse. And you look at the food is all over the place, and it's like, okay, well, stop doing the training. And the type of training that you're doing is probably wrong as well. You're probably not doing any weight training at all. You're probably just doing cardio. You're focusing too much on weight loss. That can speed up hunger levels. You're going to get hungry a lot more often. Then you look at the type of the food that they're eating. When you look at the amount of sugar that they're having in, that's destroying their adrenals. Their metabolism is slowing down. Their hormones are out of whack. And you're looking at it and saying, well, you need to step away from all the other.
Well, that was so lovely what Mark was saying, and hopefully he pops back in here in a second. Obviously,
that's live recording for you.
All right, and he is back. Welcome back to the podcast, Coach Mark.
That always happens when I'm going on a rant, doesn't it?
It's always when you're killing it.
Always happens. That's someone telling me to shut up.
it's probably someone in Ireland that's listening, that's sabotaging.
That's enough. Let Dani talk now.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, so Wendy from Minnesota would like to ask, are there any natural ways to increase testosterone naturally in women? I think I added the second word natural on accident. She says, women's hormones are so goofy.
Yeah, so as far as increasing testosterone, strength training is one of the best ways. So of course, making sure your resistance training is going well, that you're on a good program. Of course, recovery is going to be part of that, and then sleep as well. So food, I'm assuming this person is on the right, we'll call it diet if they're,
Oh, that's an understatement. Do
Yeah.
you want to know? Do you want to know what this lady eats?
Sure.
She eats nothing but ribeyes every single day. She literally orders 30 of them. She's one of our clients.
I figured if it was one of your clients, she was
butter.
already eating right, so I didn't need to say that. But yeah, strength training, right program, making sure that she's getting good recovery and good sleep as well. So those are definite keys for helping testosterone.
Cool. Thanks so much for that. Sean from Texas would like to ask, what are some of the best supplements to reduce or possibly turn off leptin resistance signals like that of aromatase inhibitors?
So there's one fatty acid type supplement that I typically use when leptin is elevated. And I think just things like regular meal timing, and dare I say tracking? I think you guys have your clients track, so I'm assuming that we can talk about tracking.
Yeah, you got to be careful which carnivore coach you're talking to these days, because you got some that are like, oh, you should never track, and you got some that are like, that's a bullshit. You got to track everything. And so I would say that we're Mark, would you say that across the board, for the most part, if people are not on prep, we loosely track protein and fat is to satiety, and if you're on prep, you kind of have to throw out the window and you got to track because we're getting shredded. So eventually you get to a point to where you have to kind of not throw your satiety signals out the window, but you got to prioritize what's on paper so that we can accomplish the goal that we're setting out to accomplish temporarily. But generally speaking, for overall health, no, not a lot of macro tracking.
Okay. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say,
I was just gonna add, when we're in like a kind of off season, then you're kind of looking after your health. Whereas bodybuilders, when they're looking to shred and get as dice as possible, then yes, it's very important. Then we look at tracking macros.
Sure. No, I was just gonna say meal timing, regular meals. So 3 times a day. I know, Colt, you're pretty big on 2 MADs sometimes, but I do think that when regulating leptin, 3 meals a day, getting some morning sunlight, and those can be super helpful. Not fasting can be super helpful for rebalancing leptin resistance.
Yeah, because I think sorry for interrupting. I think digestion is a big thing as well. Like for most people, like 2 MAD a day is a lot of food.
Yes.
Especially for people that have autoimmune problems, they can't digest that amount of food.
I'm big on that too. 3 meals, I know that 3 meals is kind of looked down upon in this space as well, especially depending on who you're talking to. But I do, because I work with a lot of people with digestive issues, and we're trying to get people to, optimize the nutrients that they're taking in. 3 meals can be so much easier to digest and make sure that you're absorbing all of the, that food that you're eating 3 times a day, instead of having to fit 100 something grams of protein into 2 meals, where someone might not be able to digest 50 to 70 grams of protein at one time.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, if someone's on like 200 grams of protein in a day, if you 100 grams of protein in each meal is a lot of protein. Whereas if you break that down to say 3 or 4 meals, like you said, it's going to be broken down a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Mark, you're a baby, man. Come on. Like, how big was that steak that you were that was too big for you? Like 200 grams. And I was like, man, a 200 gram steak for me is like an appetizer, bro. Like I'm 3 pounds and licking my plate clean still at the end of it.
Yeah, but hang on a second. You're 200 pounds. I only weigh 140. So there's a big difference. You're right. There's a big difference. You're a monster. I'm not.
Colt, I saw that burger that you posted the other day. That looked insane.
Thanks. Yeah, that's every single night. Seriously, it's about So I'm on 2 meals a day right now. 1 meal if I don't have time for the first meal, and I mean, it's got to tide me over to the next meal, right? So it's got to be big.
There you go.
Yep. You mentioned something about getting sunlight earlier in the morning. And I know that a lot of carnivore coaches are big on that. The carnivore diet is so much more than just how we eat, right? Like it's getting grounded, it's sunlight, it's cold exposure, it's all these things. Getting sunlight is something that I do every single day. It's vital, it's important. But getting sunlight in the morning is particularly hard. Why do you recommend the morning, and what are some ways that you go about doing that? Because I know you're just as busy as we are, if not more.
So I think one of the things that I always think about is daylight before blue light. So we are so overexposed to screens and computers and phones and iPads and this and that. Is that if you can get your eyes into the sunlight at least for 5 to 10 minutes before the day starts, that can help your cortisol levels, that can help other hormone levels. And that's really what kind of my goal is, and my goal for clients. So even if they again, even if it's 5 minutes and now that it's getting a little lighter, a little bit later, it's not as easier in the wintertime as it is in the summertime. But I do feel that if you can just get 5 minutes even before you start on the phones, the screens, it really does make a difference for your brain, for your mood, and not just going right into the buzzing of all the screens and everything going on with, social media and emails and all of that.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Tyler from Pennsylvania would like to ask, I would love to hear her opinion on coffee and caffeine and how it potentially impacts cortisol and other hormones negatively.
Yeah, of course. I love this question. So how long do we have? No, just kidding. So as far as coffee, caffeine goes, so let's say caffeine definitely can spike cortisol. Cortisol definitely has a relationship to spiking blood sugar. If you're drinking coffee or caffeine with a fat source or a protein source, that's definitely going to buffer that response. Is it going to cause that response in everyone? No. I have clients who have worn CGMs to test it, and their CGMs don't bump up or down when they do consume their coffee with or without anything added to it. I think that it's all in context of the person. So if someone is super stressed out, not sleeping, anxious, and knows that they have high cortisol, that person probably should lay off the caffeine and work on some things as far as getting back into balance. I am not anti-coffee if it's something that is not inhibiting your results, whether you're keto or carnivore. I'm sure I'll get shunned for that one, but that's okay. I have a lot of
somebody will have it. Somebody will have an issue with it for sure.
Yeah, I'm known for a lot of my unpopular opinions, but I also believe in doing what works for you and doing what's going to keep you successful and keep you going. So if 1 cup of coffee is like what you look forward to in a day and it works for you and it's not inhibiting your results, then go for it. But if we're talking about 4 cups of coffee and you're not sleeping, overstressed, over anxious, hormone imbalances, all the other things, then if you ask me about coffee, I'm going to say, yeah, it has to go. So I think that we just really have to look at, in context of the person, what's going on for them, what you tolerate. Coffee and caffeine, they're an appetite suppressant too. So for some people, they might get up, drink coffee and feel great, but then that sort of natural suppression wears off and it can cause overeating later on in the day. So,
big time.
Again, it's so nuanced. And so I just would encourage people to kind of be super real and honest with yourself and see whether or not it's working. Now, aside from all of that, caffeine and coffee, can it contribute to leaky gut? Can it make digestive issues worse? Can it, yes, on all of those accounts. So again, individual person, what's happening for them, what are their goals, and, what's going on individually.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it's all about lifestyle. If someone's, as I see an awful lot of this with clients myself, they'll wake up in the morning, they've had a stressful day the following day, their digestion is all over the place. They probably have a bad relationship or they have a really, really stressful job, and they wake up the next morning, they're relying on a coffee or they're relying on a pre-workout to get them through a workout. They're putting more stress on their body. It's pretty much a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I also believe that, you know, again, kind of to your point, if you're going to drink coffee, make sure it's about 2 to 3 hours after you wake up. It's not the first thing that you do. Like you said, they're not waking up and relying on it. Wake up, get some daylight, you know, do some, you know, whether it's gratitude journaling or chores around the house, or if you have to get right to work, you get right to work. But just not having coffee within that first period of time and just waiting a little bit can be helpful as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think the most important part was when you're up in the morning, like you said, get some sunlight, maybe do a bit of meditation, maybe do a bit of journaling, get your brain right first of all.
Right.
The worst you want to be doing is drinking the coffee first thing in the morning, wait about 2 or 3 hours later.
Yeah, at that point, you're depending on a supplement to do all the work for you. And coffee should be viewed as a supplement. Caffeine should be viewed as a supplement, just like creatine, just like any other supplement. Your food is your base. Your lifestyle, your food and your lifestyle is your base. Whether that's prayer, whether that's meditation, whatever it is, your morning routine is absolutely critical because it sets the tone for the entire day. And to use coffee, which I guess by definition is a drug, then you're starting with something exogenous instead of starting the day on your own terms too. Just looking at it, I guess, more mentally. Advice on cutting caffeine. This gentleman is working on doing just that. I cut caffeine out altogether about 5 months ago, and the first month was a nightmare. Like but I also went from about 500 milligrams of caffeine a day from pre-workouts. I wasn't drinking coffee. I was drinking pre-workouts. I was drinking decaf coffee too because I was drinking so much caffeine from my pre-workouts that I didn't want to like go any higher than that. Yeah, so I think that's partly why my withdrawals were so drastic. I have an athlete on contest prep right now too that is wanting to cut caffeine, but he's 8 weeks out, and so my advice to him actually was not to cut it and was to leave it in. I was like, everything else is great. Okay, after your show, yeah, then that's like a more realistic time to take on a daunting task like that. But to be completely honest, it was an absolute nightmare. I'm not sure if you have any, and I'm talking water retention was the biggest thing that I noticed. All my workouts sucked for about 3 weeks straight. And then once I got past that, cold showers actually before my workouts were kind of my workaround for that. So I was able to get like a similar wake me up kind of feeling. And then after 3 or 4 weeks, my body just figured out that it was never going to get caffeine again. I don't recommend that everybody does that. We have a lot of people that we train that do drink coffee, and actually my wife drinks coffee. She likes it. She loves it. Mark and I are both kind of extreme personalities. Would you say that's safe to say, Mark, to where we're all or nothing? We're either drinking a lot of it or none of it. So
like you, Colt, I was mad at my coffee around. I quit coffee, I think around 6 or 7 years ago, and it just messed up my adrenals. I was getting really angry. I felt I was relying on it an awful lot, and I said, it's not good for me. It's not good for me at all. And then, like you, when I came off it, I retained a lot of water, and my strength in the gym went down. But I also felt that was just down to what I was doing in my life. I wasn't sleeping properly. I wasn't eating correctly. So once I switched that around a little bit and I focused more on my sleep, I got 8 or 9 hours sleep a night. I woke up the next day feeling better, and my training sessions improved. And once I started eating properly, my digestive system was a lot better also. So that's, for me, coming off coffee was a little bit easier for you because of that. I didn't have the extremes that you had with coffee. Like I was only having maybe 80 or maybe 100 milligrams a day. That was probably my highest. I'd have the odd pre-workout, but I knew straight away because I was getting angry, I was getting vicious, I was getting into all sorts of carry on, and I knew that this can't be healthy for me, this can't be good for me, and the only way I need to come off it is just go cold turkey and just come off it straight away, because I knew what I was doing to my body. And that's what I do with most people. I say, listen, okay, what's it doing to you? Are you feeling good? Like what's it actually doing to you? And most people say, like, listen, well, I rely on it, and I think that's the first, because we look at coffee. It is a drug. It's a stimulant. And like Danny said, like most people, when a lot of people starve themselves then during the day, they'll drink coffee because they don't have to eat and they're not hungry. And then when it comes to nighttime, they're binging, they're going into the fridge, they're eating all this type of food, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't stop."
Yeah. That's exactly that's exactly what I was doing, because you remember how my portion sizes right now are big, but that's nothing compared to what they were back when I was drinking a lot of caffeine. I was actually using it as an appetite suppression, suppressant, Danny, to your comment earlier about that. And then I was experiencing exactly what you described. I would have no appetite early in the day, and then ravenous later in the day, like just a bottomless pit. And then I think the caffeine too, it's like it makes you, especially if you're overdoing it, it can make you overtrain. So I was doing way too much cardio. Cortisol was going through the roof. And yeah, so for everybody to have to cut caffeine, no, I don't believe that. That's a bit extreme. For me, I had to do it. So advice on cutting caffeine, is that something that you help people work through, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think, I have kind of like changing the diet. I think with caffeine, you can go gradual or you can go cold turkey. Some people are going to be better gradually, and some people are going to be better doing cold turkey. So if you are going to do gradual, I think, going just to half caffeinated, half decaf, and then just reducing that ratio of caffeinated to decaf. And then, bone broth is a nice transition too. So that's something to consider, because you are replacing with minerals and other good nutrients by using bone broth. So that's another way to do it. A lot of times with coffee, it's about the ritual that comes with it. And so they might not want to let that ritual go. In the morning, they drink coffee with their spouse. They go outside and sit outside and have a cup of coffee. Coffee is usually, there's a ritual with it. So
it's a thing. Yeah, it's just not something you drink. It's a way of life for some people.
Right. So that's why replacing that ritual with tea, if you're still drinking tea or they're keto. And then bone broth can be nice for carnivore. And again, just kind of replacing, reducing the caffeinated coffee with decaf, and then even bone broth at the same time. And then you still have a nice warm drink that's, way more beneficial, and just kind of using that. So you don't have to get rid of the ritual. It's just, the coffee. So those are just some things that I like to kind of have clients do.
Totally. We had a comment come in just now from the Facebook Live. When I cut out coffee for an elimination diet, I switched to decaf tea.
Yeah, that can work too. Or even, again, for keto, like if someone's reducing coffee, they kind of go to green tea, and then they can, or black tea, and then they can reduce the tea down as well. Adding like, maybe herbal teas like fennel tea, ginger tea. Those are great for digestion. They can kind of do a mix of green tea and that until they're off the caffeine completely.
Brilliant. Awesome. Do you drink coffee?
If I tell you how much coffee I drink, you'll laugh. So I have been on and off coffee many times over the years. I've been off of it for a long time. I used to drink a lot of it years ago. Now I drink about a teaspoon in a little shot of water as my pre-workout. Full disclosure. I try to wait about 2 hours after waking to have it, and it's just a little bit of a boost for my pre-workout. I feel like, there are much worse things that I could be doing than a teaspoon of caffeinated coffee and a shot of water.
Exactly.
It is awesome. I can't remember who the influencer's name was, but it was on Boundless Body Radio with Casey Ruff. He's another carnivore coach. He spoke at Carnivoreathon, and he asked, "What is your morning routine like?" After they had already talked for a half hour about a number of mind-blowing training techniques and stuff, and then he was like, "Oh, morning routine? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I could feed you a line of bull crap, but I mean, I drag my butt out of bed and just crawl over to the coffee just like everybody else does. So I'm not gonna lie." I had so much respect for him after he said that.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And I think, again, it's individual, it's nuanced. If you're the not sleeping, anxious person who, can't get control of your moods and your appetite, then yeah, coffee is not going to be the best option. But I think everything in context with the person. And I always say to people too, you know, no one has to live in your body, right? So I always see all these in these Facebook groups, the carnivore groups. Oh, you know, can I have a cup of tea? Well, I don't know. Can you? Like, does it work for you? Do you react to it? You know, does that bring you joy for the day? You know, I mean, I think to a certain degree when we get into, yes, we don't want to have a, you know, big emotional connection to food, and we want to be eating for fuel and eating for the right reasons. And no one has to live in your body. And at the end of the day, you get to make the choices that you get to make in order to, you know, decide what's going to be best for someone on an individual basis. So.
Yeah, I think if it makes you happy and it's not doing any serious damage, what's the harm?
Right.
That's very, very good advice. Lily Kane said, "Everybody is welcome at my table, regardless of what you eat." I thought that was
Hi, Lily Kane.
Very well said. Yeah, we're fans of hers. She's pretty awesome. What does a typical day of eating look like for you? Are you 3 meals a day, or do you do intermittent fasting?
Yeah, so I do intermittent fasting, usually up to about, I would say 15 to 16 hours max. I usually don't go over that. So as you know, Colt, I ride horses. So a lot of my eating schedule is dependent on my riding schedule as well. So morning, I do use, here's another one. I use Equip Beef Protein, you know, protein powder, because it doesn't, you know, I have sensitive digestion. It doesn't work for me to eat a ribeye before I go ride my horses. So I use, make some type of a drink or something with Equip Beef Protein, usually about 30 to 40 grams of protein, some added fat with that. And then lunch is usually mid-afternoon. I'll do seafood, I'll do turkey, usually lighter. I do some lighter proteins in the afternoon if I'm going to do what I would consider lighter. Sometimes ground beef for lunch, and then dinner is usually beef or pork, sometimes seafood. I don't usually eat lamb, but beef and pork are my main go-tos for dinner as well.
I actually have a handful of clients that use Equip protein. I don't, and a couple other ladies that use it, Mark, and they highly recommend it. Why is that a protein powder that you like, Dani?
So it's pure beef protein, and it's the cleanest one on the market that I have personally found, with the least amount of ingredients between the unflavored.
I've heard nothing but good things about it. Yeah.
Yeah, the least amount of ingredients between the unflavored. So the unflavored is pure beef protein, and then the chocolate is beef protein, cacao, and stevia. So, you know, I try to do a ratio of about 3-to-1 unflavored to chocolate. So I try to use mostly unflavored and a little bit of chocolate. But I just find that, you know, for those with sensitive digestion, it just works really well. There's I don't see a lot of reactions, sensitivities, things of that nature.
Yeah, because I suffer with dairy. Colt knows this. I suffer with dairy, and I suffer with a gluten allergy also. And I've tried the beef proteins over here, but they're absolutely terrible. They're shocking.
Oh, wow.
A lot of soya in them. There's a lot of chemicals and all these stuff on there. Now I've sent an order out to Richard Smith's, and I got his to see what his protein is like, but I won't try until this prep is over. But I think over the years I've tried so many protein brands because I have a really, really sensitive stomach. I can't eat as much food as I used to get away with in my 20s. So it's like Colt will tell you, like when I'm eating an egg, I can't eat the egg yolk. I can only eat the egg white for some reason. Why? When I eat the egg yolk, it just destroys me. I just don't feel good. I feel bloated. My energy levels are low. I just feel really, really bad. But when I eat the egg whites, I'm fine. And it's the same like when I used to eat a potato. I used to eat a potato just on its own, and I was getting really, really bad stomach aches. But when I put the skin on it, it was fine. So, and I think now because I've gone down the carnivore route, I find now that the foods that I'm eating now is limited to just basically just meats because I can't have a supplement. I don't want to really rely on supplements, but it would be nice to have a protein powder there, so I can make my own, like say keto brick, and make things a little bit. So it fits my lifestyle a little bit easier. Whereas what you were mentioning, Danny, like I have to rely now on meats like 3 or 4 times a day. And it comes to a stage where you're getting bored of eating the same thing every day. You'd like to have a little bit more variety. So I like to have the fish. I might have to have the protein supplement. I might have to add more foods in instead of taking more foods out, if that makes sense.
I should also add, Colt, I do eat pork belly. I do add butter to my meals because I'm sure, a lot of questions I get are like, how much protein versus fat do you eat? So I do
best fat sources.
Add fats, adding fats depending on what I need and what I'm feeling, what I'm working on, if I'm doing any experiments, as you well know, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Thanks so much for talking about the protein too. So I put that in the show notes. And so anybody, special announcement. We have not done show notes until this episode on this podcast. Oh. So if you are one of the people that have been asking for show notes, your wish has come true. So you can look down below and see a link for that. Yeah. I've been recommending it just because I'm like, okay, if these people that I trust are recommending it, then I'm a fan of it too. Now it makes a lot more sense too. It's actually it's grass-fed beef too. On top of all that, the protein powder on our website, our biggest selling point is the taste. But as far as ingredients goes, this is clean. It's really really good product.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, sorry to interrupt you. I was just gonna say, I think the other flavored ones are great for keto. And of course, if anyone's carnivore and they don't mind some of the, extra ingredients here and there. But as far as, carnivore, usually the unflavored and maybe the chocolate are the ones with the fewest ingredients.
Mm. Cool. Which one's the best flavor?
I just use the unflavored and the chocolate. My husband uses the others, the vanilla sometimes, the strawberry. I think he has peanut butter in the cabinet too. So.
Awesome. Sorry, I had another question on protein. I think might have slipped my mind. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Well, we've covered just about everything. Okay. I hear you have an upcoming weight loss accelerator program. And I know that any of our listeners that sign up for that are in the hands of an expert coach who truly cares. What will this program be entailing?
Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, so my weight loss accelerator program, it is 7 weeks now, and it is done in a private group. We have weekly sessions, usually 1 to 2 video sessions. Everything's recorded. So depending on your time zone, your schedule, you can always watch it at a time that works for you, or watch it as many times as you need to. I know for me, I like to watch videos multiple times. I work with clients on individual macros, so they'll get their own macro formula. You'll get access to my formula for life, so you can use it depending on whatever's going on for you now and in the future. We focus a lot on weight loss, body composition, of course, and then really if, people, especially women, it is a women-only program, so I should say that. If you're confused about all the information that's out there, you're not really knowing what to do next, I go over a lot of cycling different variables. So whether you're still cycling or not cycling, as far as, menstrual cycle goes, I still like to kind of, the body adapts. And so we look at cycling different variables from macros to, workouts to just different things to help with keeping the results going, not stalling, things like that. And just lots of fitness tips, lots of macro tips, keto, carnivore. I do have some that are just kind of starting their low carb journey, kind of figuring out where they fall on that spectrum, and tons more. So it's a program I'm super passionate about. I just teach a lot of the foundational information and really kind of help women get back on track, get away from their weight loss stall. I've had women who've been stalled for over a year start to lose weight. And that's great because they're finally realize why they're stuck, and they have now different tools and things to tweak and work with moving forward in their journey. So
amazing.
It sounds like a very good community for any lady that's like, okay, there's a zillion coaches out there. How do I know who to work with and who not to? It just sounds like a place where they won't be judged. They can kind of get their feet wet and just get pointed in the right direction, huh?
Yeah, and it's super safe as far as the community goes. And in fact, that's a lot of the feedback I got from the last group. You know, I just have a very effective yet, you know, a little bit of empathetic and effective way of coaching. And, you know, I feel like as a woman, I know how much I beat myself up over the years, all the years of dieting. My clients don't need a coach that's going to be, you know, pounding the hammer too. So, you know, we, of course, I'm going to say we need to do things a certain way, but I know that all the women out there, we've spent years beating ourselves up doing yo-yo dieting, restrictive dieting, all of that. So I just approach it differently. I approach the coaching from a different aspect. We have lots of accountability as well. So I have ways to, you know, really kind of bump up that accountability factor in the group too. So it's a great group overall.
Brilliant.
Great. Sounds absolutely incredible. What other projects are you working on lately? Any other programs? Any big horse riding competitions coming up?
Yeah. So as far as my horse competitions, we're heading into fall. So we sort of have some in the earlier winter and spring, a little bit of a break for me in the summertime, and then fall kind of picks up again. So I do have that on my plate. And then as far as other projects, you know, I have some things I'm working on the back end as far as like systems go to just kind of really improve how I'm working with clients, how I'm able to work with clients, kind of a platform as far as that goes. And then I have some other things in mind of you know, other group program, group project aspects to be able to help more people. So that's all on the back burner right now. I should say not back burner as far as like it's in the background.
Wonderful.
I'm slowly working on it. It's not on the back burner, like waiting to be worked on. So
Gotcha. Yeah, Taylor and I are kind of a one-man show with everything that we do too. So it's like, yeah, between clients, consultations, Skullbellz, you name it. So we are very familiar with the term back burner. Where is the best place that people can go to find out more about you?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. I try to be in stories a few times a day. So my Instagram is at carnivore.keto.fitness. My website is nutritionthenaturalway.com, which that's another thing I'm getting excited about. There's a new website overhaul coming in the next few months as well. So website, Instagram, I do have a Facebook group, cool. And email Dani at nutritionthenaturalway.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for your time on our show, Dani. It's been an absolute pleasure. We're going to put links to those in the show notes below. So all of you that are listening, please go check her out. Whenever we talk next, it will not happen soon enough. That's for sure. I love these conversations. And I mean, everything that we talk about before we start recording, after we start recording, Dani, you've been a real good friend for a long time. You've really inspired me in terms of the relationships that I'm working on building with my clients as well. And I just look up to you in a lot of ways. And so I just wanted to say thank you so very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciated. And Mark, it was great meeting you officially for the first time today, and look forward to the next one, of course.
Thanks, Dani. Yeah, it was amazing. Thanks for inviting me on.